Major League Baseball's executive hypocrites. Hypocrite, a person claiming and pretending to have moral standards or beliefs, but their behavior is revealed to be contrary. There are many hypocrites in Major League Baseball, the so-called governing body of America's game. Let's start with Joe Torre, MLB's chief baseball officer. Back in the days when Torre was manager of the world-famous New York Yankees, a very serious incident occurred one day in 1996 when he was sitting in his office in the clubhouse talking to reporters. 3 Yankees tried to rape and sodomize clubhouse employee Paul Priori and a 14-year-old bat boy with a 3-inch wide lubricated bat. Paul and the bat boy were screaming as loud as they could while struggling to get away, while players were cheering for the 3 rapists. But Torre couldn't be bothered to get off his ass to see what all the commotion was about. Instead, he asked a guy standing in the doorway of his office what was going on. Then Torre told him to close the door, and he continued talking to reporters. Fast forward to 2012, where Torre was giving a speech for his Safe at Home Foundation. Apparently when Torre was growing up, his father had abused his mother. Now the foundation gives abused women and kids a refuge, which is commendable. In his speech, Torre talked about Jerry Sandusky, the convicted child molester who'd been an assistant football coach to Joe Paterno, and how Paterno had known about the horrible continued sexual abuse of young boys by Sandusky, but had chosen to cover it up and say nothing. Torre said that Paterno was ultimately responsible because Sandusky's crimes had happened on Paterno's watch. Torre said, "If something goes on my team, though I may not be directly responsible, I'm responsible for it." If Torre really believes that, then why didn't he get off his ass and do something to stop the sexual assaults on Paul and the bat boy by his players? Why didn't he take responsibility to make sure that everybody was safe? Safe at home is a fine notion, but what about safe in the workplace? What about the violence and abuse that occurred that day in the Yankees clubhouse when Torre was either too lazy or unwilling to investigate? Joe Torre is a major league hypocrite. Another example. After media reports of players of various teams, including the Yankees, drinking beer in the clubhouse before games, drinking in the dugout during games, then more drinking in the clubhouse after games, Torre announced on MLB's website that the league was considering issuing a widespread ban on alcohol in clubhouses for the sake of discipline. Here's what he said. "Drinking is something we're concerned about. I have some plans to talk to some people. I'm going to look at it and find the best way to approach it. I have no trouble talking about that behavior. You've got to make them understand why there are rules. I want people to understand the nature if we do ban alcohol from clubhouses. We're supposed to be role models for youngsters." Is Torre's memory that short? Doesn't he recall his Yankees manager drinking booze with his brother and his coaching buddies in his office on several occasions? What example was he setting then? Or was it a matter of do as I say, not as I do? More Torre hypocrisy. And when Mariano Rivera's cousin Ruben was dumped by the Yankees as a player in 2002 after stealing Derek Jeter's glove and bat and selling them to a collector, Torre said, "That type of thing is a shock. It's sad. It's unfortunate. The clubhouse is a special place. It's our sanctuary. It's a big part of what we do. Trust is very important." Too bad Torre couldn't summon that kind of reaction after learning of the abuses and assaults perpetrated by his bully players in the clubhouse. Reminder, Mariano Rivera, along with Bob Wickman and Jeff Nelson, sexually assaulted Paul and the Bat Boy in 1996 and were never charged or punished for their crimes. And hey, if they were never charged for the criminal acts they committed, they think they got away with it. So what's to prevent them from trying it again someday on someone else? Then there's former MLB Commissioner Bud Selig, another major league hypocrite. Steroids became a major issue during Selig's watch. He made noise about doing something about them, then did nothing. Why? Because when players who used steroids began performing like supermen and attracted more fans to ballparks and added money to the owners' coffers, owners didn't want steroids to be an MLB issue. So Selig, a former part owner in a team, complied with the owner's wishes, until the U.S. Congress got involved and added pressure. Then Selig was forced to finally do something about steroids and hired his buddy George Mitchell, a lawyer, former senator, and baseball fan, to conduct an investigation. And the result was the Mitchell Report, to which Paul Priori contributed testimony, which showed the severity of the steroid situation in Major League Baseball. It was a serious indictment of Selig's hypocrisy regarding steroids. It seems that even by appointing his buddy George Mitchell to conduct the investigation, facts emerged that showed the depth of the use of illegal and forbidden drugs by a lot of MLB players. Bud was forced to finally face the facts and fix the problem by writing some rules for baseball players, which the owners and the players' union had to reluctantly agree to. Selig's stand on gambling in baseball is just as controversial and hypocritical. Here's the official MLB rule on gambling, in effect since 1927. Any player, umpire, or club official or employee who shall bet any sum whatsoever upon any baseball game in connection with which the bettor has no duty to perform shall be declared ineligible for 1 year. Any player, umpire, or club or league official or employee who shall bet any sum whatsoever upon any baseball game in connection with which the bettor has a duty to perform shall be declared permanently ineligible. And yet, in 2013, Selig decided that Major League Baseball should endorse gambling in baseball and invested a large undisclosed amount of money in the sports fantasy gambling site DraftKings. And 2 years later, the New York Attorney General, the Federal Department of Justice, and the FBI investigated allegations that insider information at DraftKings was used by its employees to win shitloads of money on other gambling sites. Wise investment there, bud. And look how Selig treated Pete Rose, who loves the game of baseball with his heart and soul. Sure, Pete made bets and admitted his mistakes, and Selig wasn't the first commissioner to ban Pete from the sport he loves. But Pete did his time in prison and paid a fine, and Selig refused to consider reinstating him, just so Charlie Hustle can be eligible for the Hall of Fame. He may never get voted in, but at least he'd be eligible. Why did Selig refuse? Because Pete was just a player and manager, not an owner like Bud used to be. Not enough influence there. Yet when Paul Priori wrote a letter to Bud Selig about a much more serious gambling problem, detailing the 3 levels of gambling occurring daily in the Yankees clubhouse, and may still be occurring today, especially players betting on games that their team was playing the same day, Paul has proven evidence. Selig refused to act and ignored Paul's letter so he wouldn't have to piss off owner George Steinbrenner. See any patterns? Owners, okay. Everyone else, not. Then there's Rob Manfred, the latest in a long line of MLB executive hypocrites. After Selig shuffled out of MLB, the owners voted for lawyer Rob Manfred, shockingly a non-owner, to carry on, and he has, just like Selig. Paul sent Manfred an updated letter in 2015 detailing the Yankees clubhouse gambling that not only went way beyond what Pete Rose had done, it offered indisputable proof and outlined the abuse and sexual assault Paul had suffered while working for the Yankees. But no response from Manfred. Selig taught him well. Never ruffle the feathers of the owners. Manfred brought in a new rule about players being disciplined for committing domestic abuse. But what about workplace abuse? Or would you rather cover that up for the owners? One more thing. Near the end of Selig's reign, a couple of thugs who look like ex-cops visited Paul Priori at his residence and showed Major League Baseball identification, gave Paul their business cards, and tried to intimidate him, warning him to stop harassing the Yankees about the crimes they'd committed. At least we know they read Paul's letters. Well, listen up, you MLB hypocrites. We don't respond to threats, and we hereby publicly challenge you to investigate Paul's complaints and proven allegations against the Yankees. And don't give us any crap about it occurring 20 years ago. Bill Cosby's many victims are holding his feet to the fire even more than 20 years later. And we're doing the same to the world-famous New York Yankees. The Yankees committed crimes, and the guilty should be punished. Justice needs to prevail for a change.